Anthony Joshua is the most successful sportsman in the last 20 years coming from the United Kingdom. He rose from the depths of the amateurs to win the Olympics and then go on to win the British Commonwealth and then absolutely destroy the world level competition in just his 16th fight. But those days of the invincible Anthony Joshua are gone. And in the recent years, he's shown gaps in his armour that have allowed him to be beaten 3 times. Was Anthony Joshua overhyped? And was he exposed in the same way that Mike Tyson was against Buster Douglas? In this video, we're going to find out. We all know about how successful Anthony Joshua has been being a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world, unified heavyweight champion of the world as well. And to be honest, he seemed pretty invincible until he came up against Andy Ruiz in New York at the Madison Square Garden. Everything just went completely wrong for him. Even though it was going great up until the 3rd round, he'd landed a heavy knockdown on Andy Ruiz, but it was a disaster. And getting caught on top of the head just sent AJ into a frenzy. And at the end, people seem to think that he quit. And he's shown clear signs of mental fragility in the ring and not being as strong mentally as what people once thought, even though he's extremely strong physically. In the biggest moment, at the highest point of Anthony Joshua's career so far, he'd crumbled. He'd fell from the top of the mountain right back down to the bottom. And although he gained back his titles in the next fight against Andy Ruiz, where he outboxed him, he'd never looked the same since that fight. He seemed a lot more cagey, a lot more scared, and a lot more frightened about what his opponents were throwing back at him, rather than putting an authoritative spite into his punches and his combinations to put his opponents away. He settled on winning by decision quite often, or winning by a late stoppage that was precursed by a very underwhelming and gun-shy performance. And against the great Alexander Usyk, this was just accentuated even more by the great Ukrainian. He beat him twice, both over 12 rounds, and Joshua seemed to have no answer for the skill and the footwork of Alexander Usyk. But he still didn't throw the punches and put the power into him as much as he did in his earlier career. And that seemed to be the thing that had been holding him back ever since that loss to Andy Ruiz. Had he truly lost the monster inside of him, and was he just now in it for the money? And at the end of the second Usyk fight, he seemed to have lost the plot a bit, throwing the belts out the ring and going on a rant about how he thinks he should have won for some reason. And he seemed to have just absolutely broke mentally. And this was one of the worst signs of Anthony Joshua's mental fragility. Would he ever be able to recover from this? Or was it the end of Anthony Joshua at the world level? But it seemingly wasn't the end. After rebuilding slowly and building himself back up, he had a destructive end to 2023, battering Hellenius, knocking him out clean, and absolutely brutalising Otto Wallen and his corner stop back in the 5th round after a beautiful performance from AJ, showing that he still had the authoritative spite in his punches and his combinations, what people thought he might have lost. And now, people are confident in AJ's ability in not only to become world champion, but to become the best heavyweight of this generation, beating Tyson Fury, who, if beats Usyk and he beats Francis Ngannou, the toughest fight of his career so far, and one of the most brutal fighters in the whole of combat sports, which he showcased against Tyson Fury himself, Anthony Joshua could become the greatest heavyweight of this generation if he defeats Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury. But will his mental fragility allow this? Or has he just been exposed for being an on-top fighter just the way that Mike Tyson was? I'm not so sure that he is. And I think that with the right preparation and the right mindset, that Anthony Joshua can overcome Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury and become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. But only if his mind's right. His physical side to the game is brilliant, but his mind needs to be right. And he needs to be able to overcome some adversity. He is not going to be smooth sailing and on top the whole time against Francis Ngannou and Tyson. So if he's not going to turn out the same way as what Mike Tyson did, he needs to build that mental strength and be able to take on the hardest fighters in the division and hit them back even harder with even more spite and even more aggression to become the undisputed champion of the world.